the idea for this initiative emerged before the pandemic, but as it evolved, and certainly by now, I think it's fair to say that we're all in the grip, not of crisis, but of multiple crises. There is the health crisis of the pandemic and the economic crisis that has followed. There is what people sometimes refer to as the crisis of the resurgent movement for racial justice. I would rather say it's not so much a new crisis as it's a belated recognition of a long-standing crisis that we have had in our country, in the sense that we haven't yet fully recognized our obligation to achieve racial justice in this country. But however you want to list them or think about them, this is a time of crisis. And I'm a believer in the old cliche that every crisis also represents an opportunity. We think that there's been a problem, I won't use that overused word crisis again, a problem in academia for a long time. And that is that students, when they come to college, are not greeted with the kind of opportunity to reflect on deep human questions of the sort that are on everybody's minds right now. The power of words and symbols for good or ill, the burden of our history for people of color, the responsibility of individuals for the welfare of others, the problem of ambiguity in the realm of science, the consolation, on a more positive note, the consolation of literature and the arts. Students are aware of these questions, problems, and opportunities, and we believe, and have believed for some time, that colleges and universities have an obligation to help them develop a vocabulary and a way of articulating their responses to these questions to themselves and with their peers. We don't think most colleges and universities are doing a very good job of this, partly for reasons beyond their control. Students, as we all know today, for very understandable reasons, are flocking to fields that seem to promise an immediate economic payoff after college. And when you're carrying a significant debt burden, or your parents are making a big sacrifice to put you in college, it's quite understandable that that's what you want to look for. They are leaving the humanities, at least as measured by the numbers of majors in literature and history and philosophy and so on. This is not a situation that I think any of us can do anything radical about in the short term, nor is it clear to me that we should want to. Those fields that the students are going to are exciting and promising, and they are persons of free will, or at least so we hope. But what we can do is ensure that they have an engagement with the humanities in college en route to whatever it is that wherever it is that their professional aspiration leads. This is the responsibility of that part of the college experience that we call general education. And what this initiative is about, it's an attempt to revitalize general education, to bring it closer to the center of the student's experience, and to place the humanities squarely in the general education space in a way that they have not been in recent years or even recent decades. Now, the Cornerstone, and we call it Cornerstone Learning for Living, because it's our hope that this is not a one-off thing that a student experiences for a semester or two, but it's an experience that will incite curiosity, that will lead to a lifetime appetite for reading and learning. So it's Cornerstone Learning for Living. This is not an attempt, and I worry a little bit that sometimes it may appear to be, it is not an attempt to return to an old structure of general education in which there was a compulsory list of books that were designated to be great and a rather short list, and students were expected to somehow master those books, and then they got a credential that said, you know, they're educated persons. We're not looking to go backward, we're looking to go forward. And we felt when we started to learn about what was happening at Purdue University that we had discovered a model for how we could try to do this. At Purdue, with our colleague, Professor Melinda Zook in the history department there, who was with us last week and will be with us again in the future. They had a problem very much like the national problem. Fewer than 10% of the recent graduates of the university had taken a single course in literature. Fewer than 7% had taken a single course in American history. Rather than throw up their hands and lament the situation and say, you know, the students don't appreciate us, the administrators don't appreciate us, the humanities faculty responded to a call from Professor Zook to try to do something about the situation. She essentially went to them and said, look, the students are not coming to you or to us. Let's go to the students. The students are in general education, the new students, the incoming students, they're in general education. They have a writing and a public speaking requirement. Let's give them a two-semester sequence, which we're going to call transformative texts. We're going to develop a list, and they've got about 200 books on that list by now. They developed it collaboratively across departments of books that have transformed the world and retain the power to transform individual lives. Books from the ancient world, the medieval world, early modern world, and the contemporary world. Books by writers of all religions and colors and perspectives on human and natural on the human and natural world. We ask you, she said, to pick half the books you're going to teach from this list, and the other half can be books that you're particularly excited about that may not be on the list, but that have had a transformative effect on you. Come to Gen Ed, we'll cap the enrollment at 30 students, and we will meet together as a collegial faculty to talk about how to teach texts with which you may not be deeply or recently familiar, and how to teach students who are not specialists, who are not likely to become English or history or classics majors, but who have humanistic questions on their minds. So they started this as a pilot with some support from Teagle 3 years ago. 3 years later, they have something like 4,000 students enrolled over 2 semesters in this transformative text sequence. We think this is an exciting model. We understand that other institutions will not want to or be able to replicate it in every detail. Every institution has different challenges and different traditions, but we think it's a good starting point. The Cornerstone program also contains an upper level component, that is, students who choose to go on and take a certain number of credits in upper level courses that connect the humanities to the fields that they're particularly interested in: technology, environmental science, health science. And if they complete a certain number of points in those courses, they graduate with a certificate, which helps to distinguish them from their peers and from their counterparts at other institutions. But more important, teaches them how to bring humanistic questions to bear on public problems, teaches them that there are no purely technical solutions to human problems. So we're excited by this model, and we would like to see it grow and spread and take root around the country. That's what this is all about. We think this is a service to democracy. We think students who go through this program and take it seriously are better situated to participate in a responsible way in our democracy. And we think we need that right now, and we will need it in the future. As I said last time, I want to make 2 quick closing points, speaking not as a foundation president, but as a teacher. The first is that in my experience, students who may think of themselves as belonging to this group or that group, or having an experience that cuts them off from the experience of their peers, students are pleasurably surprised and even comforted to discover that a writer from 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago, who may look different from them and may have had totally different kinds of experiences, nevertheless has something to say that they find interesting and valuable. That's a good experience for students to have, particularly at a time when there's so much anxiety and depression among undergraduates. It helps them to feel less lonely. And the second thing I would say, more or less the last thing, is that for teachers, a program like this can be intimidating. We're all busy. We have to do things to earn tenure in our institutions or to meet the standards that are expected of us in our scholarship and so on. So the idea of going back and teaching a text that you may not have read in a long time, or maybe you've never read, to students whom you have to convince that they should be interested in it, that's an intimidating assignment, but it's a rewarding one. It's a way to continue one's own education, and it's particularly rewarding when you have colleagues who are going to work together with you to help make it possible.